We've got MPs live with us in studio to unpack all of that. Liberal MP from Ontario, Francesco Sobera, is here. Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer is with us, as is the NDP's Foreign Affairs critic Heather McPherson. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for making the time. There is a lot to unpack, and Mr. Sobera, I'll start with you on the invitation from the Prime Minister's office to Yaroslav Hunka. When there was a connection involving the former Speaker of the House, Anthony Rota, when his office was involved, when he was the one who recognized this individual in Parliament, he had to resign. Should there not be some commensurate consequence for whomever issued this invitation from the Prime Minister's office to Yaroslav Hunka? Why are there no consequences in that respect?
Thank you, Vassy, for the question. First off, the event we're speaking about, which was held in downtown Toronto, which was attended by thousands of Ukrainian and Canadians from the Toronto area. I was there. It was one of the most powerful emotional evenings that I've gone to as an event. And where Ukrainian Canadians sang their national anthem with the President Zelenskyy there and the Prime Minister and many dignitaries from the community. We know that the invitation that was offered to this individual, extended to this individual, whether through the former Speaker of the House and now being received from the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, I believe, for him to appear was wrong. We understand that. The specifics of the details I'm not privy to, obviously, but it was wrong to do. It was wrong to extend that invitation. We understand that now. At the same time, what's important for us and for me and my colleagues is that we continue to stand with Ukrainian Canadians, that we continue to stand with the brave people of Ukraine fighting against Russia. And that's what the focus needs to be on. That's what the focus should be on, and we need to move forward.
I understand, and we're going to discuss that, but I think two things can be discussed at the same time, right? We can talk about the level of support for Ukraine, and at the same time, I'm still unclear as to why, if you're sort of describing even what happened through former Speaker Rota as unwitting, and almost blaming the Ukrainian Canadian Congress for submitting his name for the Prime Minister's invitation. Why did Anthony Rota have to resign? Because he also says it's been hell since. He says that, the Prime Minister's office was involved in some vetting. The line of accountability with your government has never really been clear on this. Did the Prime Minister's office approve his appearance in Parliament, his invitation to this reception? And if so, why should there be consequences for Anthony Rota and no one there?
Well, the first thing I would like to say, the appearance of this individual in the House of Commons obviously caused incredible hurt to the Jewish community. The individual was given a standing ovation at the time by all MPs in the House, and obviously caused much hurt within the Jewish Canadian community, and we did need to acknowledge that. In terms of specific details, in terms of the Ukrainian Congress passing on the names of literally thousands of individuals, remember the individuals.
But so the Prime Minister's office just invited whoever they said and didn't vet anything?
Again, not privy to the specific details. What I can say is the focus for myself and my colleagues is obviously understanding that it was wrong to send that this person received the invitation. We know that, but to focus on helping Ukraine, focus on helping Ukrainian Canadians as we continue to fight this war against Russia, and that's the focus.
It's okay if there's no consequences for the Prime Minister's office, even if they did vet the invitation of this person?
Like I said, that evening there, I was at that event. It was one of the most powerful events I've been to. And very emotional, very poignant. The individual was not at the event. The individual's name came forward via the Ukrainian Canadian Congress.
Okay, that's not an exact answer to the question I asked, but I'm going to move on because I want to get Mr. Scheer on the other question, which the Liberals had for your party today, which is around the vote on the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. I know that your party has talked about it being around language in there about a carbon price. I interviewed the ambassador from Ukraine who was explicit that they did not feel that it imposed on them adherence to a Canadian climate policy around a carbon tax or a price on carbon. Why couldn't you, or why would you risk sending any kind of signal to Ukraine that your party's full support is not behind it?
I'll be happy to address that, but I just have to address part of what my colleague just said. Justin Trudeau completely threw Speaker Rota under the bus. I mean, if there's one person who's going to be pretty upset at this new revelation, it would be Anthony Rota, because he had to resign. As you said, his own Liberal colleagues demanded his resignation. Now we know that the invitation actually came from the Prime Minister's office, and your question still wasn't answered. Are we to understand that the Prime Minister's office will send out invitations to literally anyone if someone suggests a name to them, especially when we have a very sensitive international diplomatic event? We're now in February, and we're just finding this out now. This happened in September. They haven't been forthcoming. Justin Trudeau has never fully answered for his role in this. Now we find out that he personally invited Mr. junta to an event, and no consequences. So massive double standard there. On the free trade with Ukraine piece, there is language in the deal. And remember, a deal binds both parties. So both parties agree to promoting carbon pricing. That is code for a carbon tax. Conservatives will not support a carbon tax. And a better question would be, why is Justin Trudeau so pathologically obsessed with a carbon tax that he inserted it into a trade deal if Ukraine already has one?
Do you feel that Ukraine is pathologically obsessed with it because they agreed to put it in the deal?
I believe Ukraine was probably looking for a deal with a trading partner. A deal, I should say, was originally signed by the previous Conservative government. There already is market access for both Canada and Ukraine into each other's economy.
But this is updated and includes the recovery, what will be the reconstruction portion after the war.
But then again, the question is, why would Justin Trudeau insist on inserting that kind of language if it wasn't necessary? And it just shows how pathologically obsessed Justin Trudeau is to insert carbon taxes into as many areas as he can.
But there is no evidence on the Ukrainian side that they believe that is the case, that it has been pathologically inserted by the Canadian government. I understand your opposition to the carbon tax and the price on carbon, but nobody from Ukraine, not the president, not the ambassador, not the groups that represent the diaspora here in Canada, have represented to your party or to Canadians that they feel that this imposes on them a Canadian direction on climate change policy or a carbon tax or anything. They want the government, they want your party to support it. Why can't you, for a second, put aside your opposition to that one line if you know that it's not going to impose that on them and say, we want to send a clear signal, we support it?
Well, as I said, deal binds both parties. So Canada is now part of this deal, which includes the language around carbon taxes. So Conservatives couldn't support binding Canada to that. In addition to that, we should be looking at all the ways Justin Trudeau has failed to support Ukraine. He's very happy that the media is focusing on this one aspect. And we're not talking about the fact that Ukraine asked for 83,000 rockets that Canada is about to spend, the government of Canada is about to spend millions of dollars to decommission. They would rather us give it to them. They can use it to fight back against Russia. Justin Trudeau hasn't done that. The Ukrainian...
I'll get you in, I will in a second, but let Mr. Scheer finish.
The Ukrainian government has asked for air defense systems that Justin Trudeau still hasn't delivered on. One thing Justin Trudeau could do is stop funding Putin's war machine by sending a turbine back to Russia so that Vladimir Putin could pump more of his energy exports into European countries, get more money from Europe to spend on his war, or to prevent Canadian-made detonators from finding their way onto Russian landmines. This whole conversation around one very narrow aspect of the Canada-Ukraine relationship is ignoring these very practical things Canada could do to help Ukraine.
Maybe they're ignoring it, but there are many questions being directed towards other aspects of the government around. I had Dmitry Kuleba, the foreign affairs minister, on the other day talking about the delay in delivering the missile defense. When it comes to the turbines, that was a very specific ask from both Europe and the United States for that exemption.
Doesn't make it
I don't think it exempts the Conservatives from questions about how this free trade deal has gone on. But let's move on and get the NDP and Ms. McPherson into this conversation as well. I want to circle back to Mr. Hunka because your party was pretty specific about the need for Anthony Rota to resign. Do you think there should be consequences for the PMO because of this invitation?
You know, I think there needs to be some accountability. There's been no transparency on what happened, what actually occurred, where the failure was, and you know, Jewish Canadians were deeply hurt by what happened. Our international reputation was deeply damaged. And right now we're talking about this instead of talking about the support for Ukraine. You know, it has caused so much divisiveness, it's caused so much pain, and we still haven't heard from the Prime Minister on how it happened or what's being done to make sure that this couldn't happen again. You know, for me, that's the biggest issue right now, is that how do we know that the Prime Minister isn't inviting other people that would embarrass Canada to have within the Parliament of Canada?
They said that they had changed the protocol in the Speaker's office, but that doesn't recognize whatever happened in the Prime Minister's office. So what consequence would you like to see? Because you were explicit, your party was explicit about what should happen to Anthony Rota.
Yeah, I mean, we can all agree we've had some real problems with speakers over the last several years. But I think one of the things is making sure that all parliamentarians understand how these decisions were made, where that gap happened. And I think there should be some accountability for the people who made the errors to allow Mr. Hunka to come and be recognized by Rota. Because, like I said, imagine how painful this is for Jewish Canadians, but also imagine to have Vladimir Zelenskyy in that chamber, our greatest ally in Ukraine, and this embarrassment happens at that point. And I also would like to respond to what Andrew just said. The Conservatives voting against the free trade agreement is not the first time that they've not showed up for Ukraine. They voted against Operation Unifier. They voted against support for Ukraine just in December. And they did it on, like, they made us all stay in there so we could watch them vote against support for Ukraine. Don't shake your head, Andrew. You voted against them.
I mean, that was them voting against all the financial aspects of the government.
Yeah.
I'll get everyone to respond.
That's ridiculous.
I'll get everyone to respond. Look, but on the question of what's in the free trade deal, I understand your criticism of the Conservatives, but by the same vein, if it is so important that we send a message collectively to Ukraine that the support for it is unwavering, the Conservatives did propose an amendment that would take that language out. Why wouldn't the NDP and Liberals be the bigger person and just say, okay, this also isn't worth it? Let's just send that message.
Well, for us, we were going to support, the New Democrats were going to support this free trade agreement. I mean, this is something that we were going to
But you didn't support the amendment from the Conservatives that would remove that language.
This is the agreement that actually the Ukrainians have asked for, that the ambassador has asked for, that they have asked for us to move that forward.
You think that they wouldn't want to support it if that carbon tax language wasn't in there?
You know what? I'm listening to our allies. I'm listening to people who have asked us to sign this. There's a really good reason they asked for us to sign this and for us to put this through fast. And we're there. We're happy to do that. I find it strange. This is, probably one of the only free trade agreements that the Conservatives won't support.
Okay,
so
I'm already gone long, so I have time for one quick comment from each of you. Mr. Sabero, you go ahead.
Strike one, the Conservatives voted against the modernized free trade agreement with Canada-Ukraine, where President Zelenskyy came to Canada and asked for this deal to be done. And all the Ukrainian organizations in Canada are supporting it, asked to get it done. We will stand by the 1.5 million Ukrainian Canadians that are blessed to live here. Second, strike two, the Conservatives voted against Project Unifier while we have Canadian soldiers in the United Kingdom and Poland training the brave Ukrainian soldiers, men and women that are fighting against the Russians. Three, they voted against the $500 million in supplementary estimates to help the Ukrainian military. Again, Andrew, let me finish. Also, the NSAMs, which we promised the Ukrainians, the air defense missile, that's something we're working with the United States to deliver.
It's a year delayed. To be fair, it's a year delayed.
The 83,000 rockets, we've been in discussions for several weeks, if not months, with the Canadian military to make sure the equipment is safe, we can transport it, and effective to deliver to Ukraine.
Would it have been the end of the world to take out the carbon let price language? If you really want to make sure that message is... I'm not absolving the Conservatives of culpability here, but if you really want to send that message, why not just take it out?
Very simple. We know when this war is over and we help rebuild Ukraine, Ukraine's going to move closer to Europe, most likely join the European Union. They need to have carbon pricing. They've had carbon pricing for over a decade. The Europeans have carbon pricing. The whole world is moving to where we work with the economy, grow the economy, and we help the environment and we defend the environment. And we know climate change is real. Unlike the Conservatives who don't believe in climate change.
Okay,
and we know, and Mr. Scheer, you have this fascination with the Prime Minister's name. You know what? We're going to stand with Ukrainian people and with the Ukrainian community in Ukraine or here in Canada, and we'll continue to stand beside you.
It's way over 30 seconds,
Ukraine.
Mr. Scheer, your turn.
Strike one, Justin Trudeau invited a member of the Waffen-SS and then lied about it. Strike two, he sent a turbine to help Vladimir Putin sell more energy to Europe to fund his war machine. Strike three, he failed to deliver much-needed artillery and rockets to Ukraine. The carbon tax, the government of Canada acknowledged last week. The government of Canada acknowledged last week in a written statement that they do not track emissions reductions from the carbon tax. The carbon tax is not working. It's just driving up the cost of everything. We're going to fight it here. We're going to fight it wherever we find it. And that's
even if it risks sending Ukraine a message that this country doesn't have
I think your question was fantastic. Why, if the government, if the rest of this deal was so important, why didn't the government just remove that language and we all could have been united on it?
But the same goes for your party. With all due respect, everybody's fighting over this one line.
Because we don't support the carbon tax here in Canada either, and Canada's a party to that agreement. And as for what Ms. McPherson said, it's completely ridiculous. Don't take that at any kind of value. We voted against the government spending package. We voted against the billions of dollars of deficits that's driving up inflation, that's keeping interest rates high. We voted against all of it. They're trying to cherry pick one piece here and one piece there. Canadians won't be fooled by that.
Ms. McPherson, last word to you, and I know that I asked everyone to be quick, but please
I'm
do be
really quick.
Thank
So
you.
all I can say is that New Democrats stand with Ukraine. We're happy to work with anyone in the government, anyone in the opposition that will be doing that hard work to get the support to Ukraine that Ukrainians need. I hope the Conservatives come back all Canadians should be standing with Ukraine right now.
Okay, I have to leave it there. I appreciate all of you making time for the discussion. Francesco Sobera, Andrew Scheer, and Heather McPherson. We're going to dig more into this a little later on.